think the average Trump voter looks at this. They feel that he was unfairly targeted for nearly a decade. There was a situation last year where if he hadn't been elected, it's very possible he could have ended up in jail. And so I think the average Trump voter looks at that and they feel that this is sort of restitution. They don't think this is corruption.
It's restitution that goes directly to Donald Trump's pockets?
They think this is a correction for years and years of political targeting where he paid $107 million in legal fees from 2020 to 2024.
The
so
RNC
we are talking about unprecedented.
A big chunk of those legal fees.
Let's jump into Phillip talking about the Trump $230 million self-payout scandal here on the record.
An unprecedented conflict of interest to the tune of $230 million. The New York Times is reporting that the president is demanding the Justice Department pay him for the cases against him. That includes the Russia probe, the Mar-a-Lago raid in the documents case, and that demand puts the DOJ, frankly, in uncharted waters, considering that the Justice Manual says that there are only two people who can sign off on that, the deputy and the associate attorney general. Now, those people, guess who they are right now? Todd Blanche, Trump's criminal defense lawyer, and Stanley Woodward, Jr., who repped Trump's co-defendant in that documents case. Now, the Times asked the DOJ if they would both recuse themselves in this matter, and the department responded by saying, in any circumstance, all officials at the Department of Justice follow the guidelines of career ethics officials. However, it is also worth noting that Bondi fired the department's top ethics official back in July. So today, President Trump, perhaps unknowingly, spelled out the conflict of interest that he may be creating.
The Justice Department, are you asking them to pay you compensation for the federal investigations that happened to you? And how much are you asking
well,
for?
I guess they probably owe me a lot of money for that. Probably, yeah, that's true. That's very interesting. With the country, it's interesting because I'm the one that makes the decision, right? And, you know, that decision would have to go across my desk. And it's awfully strange to make a decision where I'm paying myself. In other words, did you ever have one of those cases where you have to decide how much you're paying yourself in damages? But I was damaged very greatly, and any money that I would get, I would give to charity.
How does that work? That Trump, I mean, I don't even know if what he's saying is true, according to the law, but how would it work for him to even be in a position where he thinks that he is the decider on whether or not he gets paid by the government $230 million?
Well, I think the context is important. Well, first of all, I think he believes because he's the president, everything that happens in the executive branch is ultimately accountable to him. He filed these claims, one in 2023 and one in 2024, before he was elected president. So the process predates his coming to office. And I think the most important thing that he said today was that he hadn't spoken to the Justice Department about it, that he didn't really know what the process or procedure was at the moment. But if they did wind up paying him, he would give all the money to charity. So it looked to me like he was sort of downplaying it today.
But he also said, I mean, look, the process might have begun before he was president, but he's certainly indicating that it could end while he is the boss of the people who ultimately decide. And he did also say, you heard him say it there, it's going to come across my desk. I might be the one to decide whether I get paid $250 million. I mean, that, Scott, I mean, do you think that that is something that should ever happen in this country?
I don't know if it's true, if it has to come across his desk or not. However, because it is an unprecedented situation.
But do you think he should get paid by the Justice Department? That's the question.
My personal advice, if he asked me, would be have him table this until you leave office. The process started before you came to office. You then won an election. And you look, I think maybe he was damaged and he's entitled to the process. If it were me and I were advising him, I would just say, you could table it and put it off until you leave office.
Was he damaged?
No, I mean, he's president. How much damage did he go through? His wealth apparently is higher now than it was when he was elected. Politically, I'm not in the habit of giving Republicans advice, but there is no way a president gets paid $250 million and people can barely pay their rent and put groceries on the table. That is smart. Just rationally, if you ever want to be able to make a case that you are for the working people, that math does not math in any, most people can't even fathom having $1 million, but $250 million Just doesn't make sense to me.
Let's say, though,
How
that it's
does that
true
work?
that he gets it and he gave it to charity. Would that change your opinion?
The money is taxpayer money, though. Like, I don't want my taxpayer dollars to. If I want to give to charity, I give to charity all the time. Let me do it that way.
Why is taxpayer dollars going toward this?
Well, for context, Donald Trump has faced more politicization and weaponization of the DOJ than any person in history. He's faced this for almost 10 years. The Mar-a-Lago raid, the Mueller report, and I think the average Trump voter looks at this. They feel that he was unfairly targeted for nearly a decade. There was a situation last year where if he hadn't been elected, it's very possible he could have ended up in jail. And so I think the average Trump voter looks at that and they remember back to the Obama era when the IRS was targeting the Tea Party, and they feel that this is sort of restitution. They don't think this is corruption.
It's restitution
they think
that
this
goes
is
directly to Donald Trump's
correction.
pockets?
They think this is a correction for years and years of political targeting where he paid $107 million in legal fees from 2020 to 2024.
The
so
RNC
we are talking about
paid
unprecedented
a big chunk of those legal fees.
numbers, but I would also add
Didn't
this
really
is
come
not
out
the
of
first
Donald
time that the
Trump's
DOJ has in fact paid out money in settlements. They paid $2 million.
Sure, yeah, they
Lisa
paid
Page
out
and Peter
they paid
Strzok.
out one to a January 6th rioter. That also happened, but it doesn't necessarily make it right. And I think the question is, for the rest of the country, perhaps not the MAGA folks, how do they see this? And also, what does it say about the Justice Department that Trump is even setting up this situation in which he's got two former lawyers, effectively, who might decide whether he gets a massive payday?
Listen, it stinks to holy hell, and I actually think Scott is suggesting a very Solomonic solution here. I heard Jeffrey Toobin say earlier today that there's a statute of limitations that runs. So I think they need to figure out how to stop that statute of limitations until he is no longer president. Alternatively, find independent people that can take a look at the claims. Look, there's people who claim that getting indicted and convicted actually made him president and helped him become president. But this is just, one more stripe on the tiger, right? You've got the crypto grift. You've got the Melania getting paid $40 million from Amazon for a documentary. You've got Melania selling Christmas ornaments. You've got Trump hawking watches. You've got the $400 million jet from Qatar. I mean, the list is long and long and long with no oversight. And it is happening at a moment when there are federal workers showing up to work, like TSA agents, and not getting paid. When there are lines that go around the block at soup kitchens in Washington, D.C., of federal workers that don't have the money to buy groceries and feed their families. So the tone deafness here is disgusting, but at the same time, it is the level of corruption that has almost become normal because of the lack of Republican willingness to be oversight on what is happening.
Trump seems to also really enjoy getting money out of entities. I just truly, I think a lot of people would be surprised to see him trying to do it out of the U.S. government. I mean, he's already, law firms have already paid more than $1 billion in what he is describing as free work for Trump. Paramount, $16 million, ABC, $15 million, Meta, $25 million. And this is perhaps just one more notch in his belt that he'd like to add.
Sister Abby, it reminds me really of the greatest satirical writer in the English language, Jonathan Swift, who died in Dublin, Ireland, 280 years and 2 days ago in Gulliver's Travel, where he talks about the thickness of the corruption, not just of one party, but of the system as a whole. The levels of spiritual malnutrition and moral constipation, so that the average person in the country looks and sees there's unbelievable forms of mendacity and even criminality. And it's not a question of just one party, it's the system as a whole. And what happens in such a moment is that people begin to lose trust, people begin to pursue different other options, wondering how in the world are they going to come to terms with this level of corruption. And what happens is one side will do something immoral and point out the other side is doing it immoral, so they just rationalize the water, let it flow, H2O was cool. just rationalize the other side so that the immorality gets deeper and deeper. Democrats are immoral, Republicans are immoral, rationalization, the money's still flowing beneath the process, and people say we're losing the country.
It is against the backdrop of this government shutdown, as Anna pointed out, that all of this is happening. And, Trump is saying that. He's also saying he wants to punish blue states, and even some conservatives are pushing back. Here's Lisa Murkowski saying, you show me one blue state in America where you don't have pockets, maybe even big pockets of Republicans, of conservatives, of MAGA people, of pro-Trump. Do we not care about them? Are we just saying if you don't like it, you should move to a place where you've got a Republican governor? It makes no sense. Why are we being punitive? It's hard enough when the government is not operating as it should be. Let's not be punitive to Americans just to score political points. It seems like a very reasonable point for her to make about this threat to take away funding to so-called blue states.
First of all, I'd just like to point out you can't take him anywhere. Secondly, that's the first time that's ever happened on this show. Third, I think...
And then they say Latins like to talk with their...
Exactly. I'm a blues man. I get into it. But you go right ahead. Go right ahead.
Here come the rags. Look, I think that's one point of view. I think another point of view is he's playing hardball with blue state governors and blue state mayors who are playing hardball with him. And that's one of the
playing
ways
hardball with a lot of Americans and perhaps a lot of Trump voters. I mean, that's her point, is that it's not just you punish the so-called blue state governors. The governors are fine. It's actually the people who are going to be affected by this.
Well, look, the people elect those governors and they elect those mayors, and they have to take into consideration what kind of position they've been put in by their local leadership. And
God,
look, it's hardball.
Like
it's a little different than before, but it's hardball.
When a hurricane strikes New York, it's Americans getting struck. When a hurricane strikes Texas or strikes Florida, it's Americans getting struck. It's not about blue or red when it comes to Americans suffering and Americans wanting opportunity and Americans wanting equal treatment. That just, I don't think we should be talking like that. I just don't.
It's,
what hurricane is striking right now?
Well, no hurricane has struck, but I can tell you that when Trump was president in the first term, hurricanes struck within the same term Florida, Texas, and Puerto Rico. And the treatment that Puerto Rico got was paper towels thrown at them.
Record amounts of money was sent to Puerto Rico.
The treatment
Massive
that
amount of money was sent to Puerto
something
Rico.
out though that just happened. This is like, I'm a former teacher, and this is what we call a science experiment, right? That cup was spilled, but we all flinched. Because one action impacts everybody, right? So when Donald Trump...
that's good, Ashley.
That's good.
I was a teacher. Had to go on your toes, okay? But seriously, and then we all are going to have to clean it up. People who weren't even a part of this
Cornell
show.
is cleaning that up.
We had people who we didn't even know, people from on TV. We had someone had to come on our shot and give us something. It's an analogy to what's happening in our country, right? The water is the struggle that people are facing right now. You're in a blue state, you're in a red state, and these are people over here that are collateral consequences that have to then run out in the middle of our show and clean it up. The reality, though, is there's still a mess on the table, and somebody has to rise to the occasion and fix the problem.
All right, while we clean up our mess.
We need more
now.
I'm just telling you, that's not enough.
You are not doing a good job of this.
Dr. West.
I know, you're just spreading the mess.
All right.
It's being soaked into
We need the quicker picker-upper. I don't know if you've got that.
Dr. West, I think we're going to need some more rags for you to clean that up.
Staggering, even by Trump standards, the President of the United States, who oversees the Justice Department, ordering the Justice Department to pay him $230 million for having the audacity to hold him accountable for his criminal conduct. Twice impeached, convicted felon Donald Trump now asking an agency he controls for $250 million, stunningly bald-faced corruption. And the giving to the charity line is a farce. He 100% will not give a dime of that money to charity because that would be for losers, and he's a winner. You got to be a killer. He's a killer. Charity's weak. No way. And the harm he's owed money for is what exactly? His reputation? He won the presidency again. Finances? He's far richer now than he ever has been in his entire life. Legal fees aren't a blank check from the Treasury, and I was investigated is not a cause for action that lets you bill the government for doing its job. If this flies, this system breaks down. Cornel West was absolutely right. This is a staggering failing of the system itself. And now for some tough love for my fellow Democrats. This is who Trump is. We know that. But it's also an indictment of the guardrails that were supposed to stop him when the Democrats won back the White House in 2020. Democrats had years to set clear lines and pursue accountability with urgency. Merrick Garland slow-walked his prosecutions, and Biden treated accountability like a political risk instead of a constitutional obligation. That vacuum is how you get a president who effectively now is testing whether he can sign off on his own $250 million payout. So let's be clear. This isn't restitution, as Lydia on the panel there claimed. It's self-dealing, plain and simple. It's the Banana Republic behavior out in the open more than we have seen yet in President Trump's second term in office. It only reaches this point when institutions decide that avoiding the fight matters more than defending the rule of law. Trump will be Trump. The question is whether the system chooses to be a real government or a paper tiger. Like this video if you made it this far, and hey, subscribe while you're at it. I'll see you real soon. Bye.